Good day to you, Jason here, Birchfield Family Farm, Oxford, Ohio, raising grass-fed Red Devon cattle, St. Croix sheep and chickens on a rotational grazing system. We have mama and kiddos here out in the garden today, getting that finished up here. Plants are just about all in here on that garden. You know, we've done a few videos on the garden there. No-till system. We do use the black fabric, but did a cover crop over the winter and grazed that twice with our sheep, and just leave everything right there and go right over top of it, plant straight into that. Use a little bit of Johnson Sioux compost. Everything seems to be working out. Got a good word for you today. This comes from Matthew 18. These are Jesus' words. See that you do not look down on one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, I tell you the truth, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should be lost. We are in the midst of a grass explosion here on the farm. We are in paddock 6. We need to move to paddock 7 today. I had a couple, actually one really good question on the channel about mowing behind animals when we move. Let's go out and get into that. Let's do a move here. Okay, wow. I hate to disturb this for a move, and everybody is super calm here. Yeah, this is paddock 6 here. I would like to go on to 7 today. We just moved on to this yesterday, and we got a pretty good graze and a pretty good trample here. Let's head over here and see. Let's see what paddock 7 is looking like. Yeah, just loads of good stuff here. No issues whatsoever this time of year on the grass side. So yeah, let's go ahead and make a move. Those guys there know what we're up to. Okay, so even though there's lots left here, cattle at least are ready to move. I don't see sheep really getting up here. We may have to chase them. And I see we've got some fly pressure here. We've had a very, very wet year so far. That's going to impact those flies. Later on in the season here, we'll get our layers going here in the rotation behind the cattle, and they'll bust up those pats and keep some of that fly pressure down. I don't like bringing layers out this early in the season for 2 reasons. Number one, it's very labor intensive. We spend about an hour a day just moving layers. And then number 2, this time of year, the pats are a little bit runnier. And so there's just not a whole lot for them to break up. They pretty much, kind of dissipate in the rain. And so those 2 reasons combined. Plus, I have noticed a dung beetle population. With the way that we're managing now, we're seeing a resurgence in the dung beetles, and that's just awesome. I love seeing that. And so chickens will disrupt that. I'm not sure to the extent that'll happen, but okay, so I had some help randomly show up at just the right time here. Let's see if he can run the rest of them in here. Normally everybody's over here ready to go. Now that's just further testament here that we've just got so much. There's just so much grass and forage. Everybody's staying pretty well satisfied. There we go. Didn't take much here. Let's check out little lammies here. We do the move. Everybody's looking really, really good. Very happy this year with the way things have gone. Hey buddy, you're getting a little close there. Loving that grass, huh? Into that clover. Yep. There's mama with her 3. Here you can see what we're coming off of here. We are leaving lots behind, but look at all this trample. It's got a lot of really good impact. Looking over here at paddock 7, what we're coming on to, just an explosion of grass and good stuff. There's a red clover there. That's cattle and sheep candy. So, selective versus non-selective grazing. I mean, let's try and define some terms first. What does that even mean? What is selective grazing? So selective grazing, the way I understand it, is when you just turn animals out. Our ground here is really kind of a neat, to me it's interesting because we rent a lot of ground. And the ground that we rent to graze, there's a local cattle farmer that just turns cattle out. Okay, so backs up the trailer, unloads them, and they're out here on all the grass for the whole summer. Okay, what's gonna happen there is you're gonna have selective grazing. So the cattle are going to, they're gonna select what they like best. And they're gonna go around and they're gonna eat that forage, which is most palatable, and they're gonna leave the rest. Okay, and so what happens when you selectively graze over time is your pasture will eventually end up growing lots of undesirable species, meaning undesirables, meaning cattle or sheep. If you're running sheep, they don't want to eat those. Okay, and a lot of times that looks like thistle, that looks like multiflora rose, that looks like poison hemlock, and so you really, with selective grazing, there's a tendency to degrade, okay, and kind of devalue your pastures. They're just not as nutritious or as productive for livestock, and so we don't want to selectively graze. We want to move away from selective grazing. So we talk about non-selective grazing. What is non-selective grazing? We're bunching animals up, and we're upping our stock density, and we're getting everything in a certain area consumed. You know, there's different thoughts on this, like animals can be trained over time, you know, to eat more of the undesirables, you know, if they're confined to smaller spaces. You know, we get into the whole continuum, though. You can talk about mob grazing, you know, really upping the pounds. I'll tell you what I like to do here on our channel is just speak about our experience, okay? Just speak about what I've seen. And here's the interesting thing to me. When I can use multi-species and when I can get my pounds per acre up, I'm gonna say north of, you know, 35, 40,000 pounds per acre that I'm grazing, then I'm gonna start to see more of a non-selective graze. Why is that valuable to me? Well, when you're selectively grazing, you can do that, but in my opinion, you're gonna have to mow, okay? You're gonna have to bring a bush hog in, you know, a mower, something, and go behind the animals when you're selectively grazing if you don't want those undesirables to continue to populate your pasture. With the non-selective grazing, the way that we've done it here with multi-species, I do not have to mow behind them. And I do not see undesirables popping up. I mean, that's the key there, okay? And so, you know, I think here's an interesting point to me. Is there's a balance between your animal performance and your land performance. And basically, you kind of give up one to get the other. And so it's this huge balancing act. And I'll throw this chart up here, but this is your gain per acre and your gain per head. So here's the kind of the confusing thing is if you set stock graze and you turn animals out and just let them roam, you're gonna have better gains, okay? You're gonna have better livestock performance, letting them selectively graze, at least in the beginning, okay? I mean, you can look at this chart here, you know, look at your gain per head, you know, but you're giving up productivity per acre. You're giving up gain per acre, okay? And so you know, as you start to rotate and you start to bunch them up, then your productivity per acre increases. And so we're after that optimal point there where, you know, gain per head and gain per acre come together. And you know, I was just telling somebody, I had the question on the channel, well, you know, should I mow behind livestock? You know, if I'm rotating, should I mow behind them? And I think, you know, the answer to that is it depends. You know, it depends, you know, what's your stocking rate? How many live weight pounds per acre are you running? And then what's your graze look like? You know, are you getting, you know, a full, are they knocking it down with trample and or, you know, consuming everything? And then there's another factor in there as well. You know, you don't want to overgraze, right? And so as we get in, we talked about that last video, as we get in more into August and September, that overgrazing will come into play. And so we're looking more at, you know, needing twice the time, you know, in August and September as we do right now, just because the growth rate slows. But, you know, do you need to mow behind? You know, we don't do that. I don't do that here. I can, you know, we can. You know, I think part of the culture we live in the US here is we've got this like obsession, you know, with making everything look uniform. You know, I think that kind of comes from our kind of viewing farming as row cropping and monocropping, and everything looks the same. And I tell you, this way of farming and grazing will really redefine your concept of beauty. I was just thinking about this morning. You know, I used to kind of look out and, oh man, look at that beautifully manicured, mowed lawn. You know, isn't that beautiful? Well, you know what I find even more beautiful now is a field, you know, a pasture that is just stocked, right? I mean, it's grown up, it's lush, you know, very, very similar to what we've got out here right now. This to me is beauty, because this will feed our cattle and our sheep very nutritiously, and then consequently feed and provide for myself and my family. And so I think, you know, we have to have a you know, an openness to having beauty actually redefined, and not needing this to look, you know, manicured and all the same. You know, that's not the way nature is. Be willing to redefine, to have things redefined. But you know, I thought that was a really good question. Do I need to mow behind when I'm grazing animals? And I would say if you have a very low stocking rate, but if you have a very low stocking rate, you can always narrow down and make smaller your paddock sections, right? And you know, you've got shade in there. You've got other parameters. You've got shade in there too. When it gets hot, you know, making sure cattle have shade access and that type of thing too. So I know that can be challenging. But if you're just starting out and you just got very small numbers, you know, experiment with some smaller paddock sizes, you know, and see if you can get that full graze and that full trample. Again, not advocating overgrazing though. We can talk about that in another video. As I was explaining to the person that had the question about mowing, you know, my view on it is it's an art, right? It's an art, you know, grazing this way and managing livestock and trying to do it in more of a holistic way that makes sense all the way around. You know, we're not just looking at the financial piece, okay? That's a part of it. Undoubtedly, that's a part of it. Not just looking at animal performance, but it's the animals, it's the land, it's us. It has to work for us, time-wise, energy-wise, stress-wise. You know, there's just multiple factors if we're going to be successful and continue farming in this way. Multiple parameters, always a challenge. You know, one other thing too, as we watch Emma graze here. I think she's just a grass machine. One other thing too, I hear a lot of people, and there's kind of a common misconception, like when we set stock graze, you know, well, it's less labor, you know, just turn them out. You know, I don't have time. I hear it all the time. I don't have time to move animals, you know, every day, be out there, you know, sometimes multiple times a day messing around. And, you know, at first glance, I used to think that was a fair criticism. But in observing what's gone on here on our farm with having these paddocks in these areas where we rotate versus observing the areas of our farm that are set stock grazed, if you set stock graze, in my opinion, you have to mow. I mean, your pasture is going to degrade. You're going to have undesirables that continue to pop up if you're set stock grazing. And so, you know, out here we've got, I don't know, 14, 15 acres that we rent beyond the paddocks here. And, you know, so there's this common misconception that, well, you know, just turning animals out, I don't have to do as much as if we were rotating. Well, you've got a bush hog 14, 15 acres of ground, and you've got to do it, I would say, at least twice, okay? At least twice. And so throughout the season to knock back the undesirables. And so, you know, by the time you figure in that extra time of mowing and bush hogging, you've got your equipment cost, you've got your fuel cost, you know, your time, you know, you figure all that in for twice during 2-3 times during a season. And I tell you, I don't think it looks too bad, you know, to be out here for, you know, our moves take us, maybe 10 minutes a day to do. Now we do have a water system in place. Lines are buried with these riser hookups. Everything's running from a couple elevated tanks, so that makes it easy, you know, to move. And we've got our wire in place. I did our wire here ahead of time. That can be a disadvantage if you want to change paddock size, because, you know, that's already set. But we're not setting up paddocks every day is my point. And so, you know, 12 minutes a day, you know, to call them and move them into a new area really has been a fit. And I just think, I think, you know, you're gonna be closer time-wise when you factor everything in over a season, when you factor in mowing, right? Factor in mowing all of that acreage 2 or 3 times. I think it's going to be pretty close, to be honest. So keep that in mind. If you're set stock grazing, you have to mow. So looking at this, you know, you may say, well, why not go the other way then? You know, why not really clamp them down? You know, get that live weight animal per acre. Let's get that up to, you know, 500,000 or even 1 million pounds per acre, you know, and just let them hammer that ground. I think there can be a place to that. I really do. There are some parameters there and some context. Obviously, you know, we've tried going smaller than the 1/4 acres here at times, and it just it wasn't a fit. The animals, we used a netting though, and it was just it just didn't work out. The animals got out of it and just didn't like being, you know, clamped down that far. And so I think, you know, doing that consistently, could you train your animals? Potentially, you know. But I think personally, I think there's going to be some individual livestock performance that you're going to give up, you know, based on that chart. We're going to get a really high return per acre. You know, if we do that, you know, doing that consistently, I could see where that, you know, that obviously that's going to be more labor. You know, you're going to be out here moving several times a day, you know, 4, 5, 6 or whatever, and could certainly be done. But I just think, you know, I look at mob grazing and getting into those kind of numbers. I look at that more as a tool. So if I had a spot of ground that had some forage on it and was just really, really bad in poor shape, maybe like that paddock 1, I wouldn't mind experimenting with doing a little mob grazing over there if I can find a way to keep them clamped down and in. Again, also giving them shade, that's important when it gets hot. But I guess I just view mob grazing as more of a tool rather than like, oh, hey, I do this, all the time. I mean, you think about it though, and you're concentrating all of that, all of the nutrients, the manure, the urine, you're concentrating that in a smaller area. And so, of course, as that rests, you're gonna have considerable trample as well, all that organic matter. And as that rests, that soil, that's definitely gonna be a huge improvement. Even, looking at these animals, even just they're finding now the droplets, the droplets of moisture in the nostrils of cattle, of sheep. They're even finding now that's almost like it's very microbially rich. So it's almost like a swab of inoculation, as they get down and as they graze, every time you've got the moisture from the nostrils that's being imparted to the grass, or you've got the saliva, the interaction with all of that microbial life there, and that's in addition to the dung and the urine. And so just, really, stepping back and looking at the whole picture, the whole ruminant system and animal and grass and the interaction, it really is an intelligent design. It's just a masterful crafting of God, and it's one of the reasons I enjoy sharing it, because it does absolutely point to Him in every aspect on the interaction on these animals that were just created for each other, pasture grass and ruminants, and I love it. So just to kind of give you some guidelines here and what some other people say, you've heard my experience and what I think. Joel Salatin does say when they get around 50,000 pounds of live weight animal per acre, that's when they start to see rapid range improvement. And so that kind of gives you a sort of a guideline there, maybe a starting point and just some numbers to kind of kick around there. But I would say, with us here, I think we're 40 to 50,000 pounds when I calculate that out. Unfortunately, I don't have a bigger cattle scale, so we have to estimate on them. But I would put us right in that range. I do see a difference here, in the ground that we rent versus the ground where I run animals. I do not have to mow, and I don't have the undesirables popping up here. Things in the paddocks, in my estimation, they trend towards getting better and better each year, dropping that dung, that manure, the manure and the urine, and then obviously having our free choice mineral that the animals are cycling through them. I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and there was a lady, a farmer, explaining how a lot of the autoimmune conditions that we're seeing in humans now are due to the absence of trace minerals. She was advocating implementing more of a holistic mineral type of program, and got me thinking, maybe it's not just even about grass-fed versus grain-fed and the higher omega-3s and the healthier meat that we see with grass-fed. Maybe it's also what does it look like, when we consume remineralized meat, or meat that has consumed the proper amount of mineral, that has trace minerals in it. What does that look like for our health? Is there even a market there for, remineralized meat? Maybe, having that as part of your farm marketing program. I know we pay through the nose here for this, the free choice mineral and all that, but I think the benefits all the way around far outweigh the cost, in my estimation. Some of my thoughts today. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Questions, comments, maybe you've got experience in some of the areas we're talking about here, weigh in, leave a comment. thanks for following, guys. Always amazed and honored at all the feedback that we get, and comments and people just from all over the world checking in. So cool. Thanks for hanging with me today. Talk to you next time. Be blessed and be at peace. Take care.